I was awake during a robbery. I heard the robber's secret. It was past midnight when I heard a ticking sound. I opened my eyes and stared at the roof to make sure I wasn't imagining things. I held my breath for a moment and listened carefully, and the sound ticked again. OMG, it's a thief! I was alone in the house. My parents were abroad. They were spending 2 weeks in Paris, and I stayed at home because I had school. My granny came to check up on me daily. But now, I'm in big trouble. What the hell am I supposed to do with a thief in the house? I heard his footsteps getting closer to my room. My heart started pounding like crazy. I could feel him pressing the button on the doorknob to open the door. I quickly pulled the blanket over my head and pretended to be dead asleep. I placed my hand on my mouth so I didn't make any sound. The door opened and he switched the light on. I felt his presence in the room. He stood by the door for a few minutes that felt like a lifetime. I was scared that he would come close and find out that I was wide awake, but he didn't. He closed the door and went out. I removed the blanket from my face and took a deep breath. It felt like I was suffocating underwater. My head was spinning from thinking fast. What should I do? I can't let him rob us. It's not that we have that much money anyway. I need to stop him. I took my phone that was on the table next to my bed and I called the police. I told them that I was alone and someone was robbing the house. They told me to stay where I am and wait for them to come. But I couldn't sit still. I needed to see what that man was doing in the house. I got up and carefully tiptoed to the hallway. I heard some noise coming from my parents' bedroom. The door was open and I stood there watching him. I saw his back while he was going through some of Mom's drawers. Then I heard him say, "Don't worry, it's an easy one. The kid is sleeping. I'm taking the jewelry now." What? Yeah, the Smiths are next Sunday. The Smiths? OMG, he is going to rob Lauren's house. Lauren was the head cheerleader, and as all cheerleaders are, she's so hot and beautiful. Her parents are the wealthiest in our town. The combination of these two led her to be a spoiled brat. I had a huge crush on her. All the boys did, actually. But she only dated college boys. High school students were amateurs to her. I took 2 steps backward, and accidentally I stepped over a shoe that was in the hallway. It made a squeaky sound. I froze for 2 seconds, thinking the thief had heard it. But no. I went to the kitchen to hide, and 10 minutes later the police arrived. They got into the house, but unfortunately, the thief had already gone after he took Mom's jewelry. I went to school the next day feeling a bit scared. I felt like I was being watched 24/7, but I couldn't let that stop me. I had a mission. I needed to warn Lauren that her house was going to be robbed next. I looked for her, and she was standing with a bunch of her friends. I went over and asked, "Hey Lauren, can I speak with you for a second?" Lauren rolled her eyes and told her girlfriend sarcastically, "Here we go, another stupid fan." And all her friends burst out laughing. Her comment pissed me off. All I wanted to do was warn her, but with that attitude? I couldn't care less if the thief robbed her as well. What a mean person she is. I looked at her fiercely and said, "You know what? Never mind." I left her and headed to my English class. I was thinking of telling the police, but there's a possibility that the thief finds out it was me. It would not take him long before he concludes that I was awake during the robbery. He'll come after me. No, that wasn't a good idea. For the next few days, I kept trying to talk to Lauren, but she always made fun of me saying, "Oh, look at the stalker. He can't keep away." Gosh, she's so full of herself. Sunday came and I was too nervous. I couldn't sleep knowing that someone was planning to rob Lauren, so I decided to go observe and call the police when the thief tries to break into her house. Around midnight, I went to Lauren's house wearing all black from head to toe. I climbed the tree and sat there waiting, but suddenly one of the rooms lit up. I looked closely. It was Lauren. She was going out of the bathroom wearing her PJs. My God, she looks gorgeous even without any makeup on. But that's not important. The thief was coming any minute, and he might harm her if she finds that she's still awake. I took out my phone to send her a message. I DM'd her over Instagram, but she instantly blocked me. So I did the next obvious thing. I climbed to her room and knocked on her window. She had a little balcony outside, and I stood there waiting. When she saw me, she freaked out. She wanted to scream, but I waved my hands begging her not to. I was sweating, thinking she would now push me over the balcony and I would die trying to save her. She opened the door and shouted furiously, "What are you doing here, you sick weirdo? I don't want to date you or have anything to do with you. Don't you get it?" I yelled back, "First, I don't even like you, and second, I'm trying to save your life." She stared at me for a few moments and asked, "What do you mean?" And I told her the story. I watched her facial expression turn into complete horror. Then she had a daring look on her face. She said, Dad isn't here, and Mom is still partying somewhere, but no robbing will happen today. Not on my watch. Lauren went out, but I kept waiting in the bedroom. She looked at me and said, "Come on, don't be such a puss." I laughed and followed her. We locked all the windows and the doors, and she made sure that their security system was working. She turned the lights off. Then we sat in the second floor hallway waiting for him. We had our phones, a mop stick, and a tennis bat. You know, just in case we needed to defend ourselves. I'm sure we looked ridiculous, but that was the best we could think of. We both were nervous, but Lauren said, "This is so thrilling. I can feel the adrenaline going through my veins." I laughed, and we started talking. To my surprise, Lauren was actually smart and funny. We talked so much to the point that we forgot what we were doing. I told her, "You know, you have a different personality than the one you show at school." She laughed and said, "Oh, that's a long story." Then suddenly, we heard some noise coming from the kitchen. Lauren whispered, "Oh no, they must have gotten in from the kitchen's back door." We stood there feeling anxious. Our hearts were beating so hard to the point I felt they were about to get out of our chest. We heard some footsteps and 2 ticking sounds. Then the kitchen door opened and a man wearing a mask walked out. He was carrying a bag. I reached for my phone to call the police when Lauren stopped me. I whispered, "Are you crazy?" But Lauren kept looking at the man who heard us and started climbing the stairs to see who's there. We freaked out and quietly opened the door next to us and went there. It was a storage room full of old dusty things. There wasn't much space. Lauren and I stood across from each other. We were staring at each other's eyes, and believe it or not, all I wanted to do was kiss her. After all, that was my first and probably the last time I'll ever be that close to her. Then we heard his footsteps again. This time he was going downstairs. I sighed deeply. Thank God. But Lauren said abruptly, "He's going for the painting! The $1 million painting!" I choked up when she said that. They decorate their house with money? How rich are they? Lauren got out of the room and went downstairs. I was about to go nuts. Why is she risking herself like that? "Lauren, get back here, you idiot!" But she kept following the thief to the living room, and I followed her. I'm the crazy one for doing what she says in the first place. We were looking carefully at the thief while he was trying to take off the painting. But Lauren said loudly, "Is that you, Mr. Davis?" I panicked. "It's over. We are dead. What are you doing?" But surprisingly, the thief froze for a whole minute. I took out my phone and turned the flashlight on. I looked carefully, and OMG, the figure really resembled Mr. Davis, our school janitor. Lauren turned the lights on. The thief turned around and took off his mask, and really it was Mr. Davis, the old man who all pupils love and adore for his smile and kindness. "Why are you doing this?" Lauren asked. Mr. Davis started to weep. He was shaking and said, "I need money for my daughter's surgery. She has cancer." Then he continued explaining that the medical expenses are too expensive that his family cannot afford. When he overheard me saying that my parents were away and heard Lauren speaking with her girlfriends telling them about the painting, he decided to rob the houses to get the money he needed. I already lost my son 10 years ago for a car accident. I can't lose my daughter now. Then he sat on the floor feeling hopeless. We felt sorry for him. Losing a child is the worst thing anyone could ever experience. Then, out of nowhere, we heard police sirens outside. Lauren's mom called the police when she checked her phone and saw the cameras. The police took Mr. Davis, who was really scared and feeling guilty, and I had to go home. The next day at school, Lauren came rushing to talk to me. "Robin, we need to do something about Mr. Davis's daughter." I smiled and said, "I know exactly what to do." I designed a webpage for donations, then we headed to every class in our school asking the students to donate as much as they can. Most of the students and teachers wanted to help. Then Lauren and I held a charity event in which we raised extra money. Lauren also managed to convince her parents to give some money away. She was amazing at convincing people. Mr. Davis's daughter went through the surgery and she's staying at the hospital recovering. As for Mr. Davis, he was only sentenced to 6 months in jail because Lauren's parents and I dropped our charges. Mr. Davis returned Mom's stolen jewelry, and everything went back to normal. But the worst thing was after the whole thing ended, I felt like I fell in love with Lauren even more. She showed me the real side of her, and now I really wanted to date her. Homecoming party was coming up, so I thought of asking her out. During lunchtime, I went to the cafeteria where she was eating her lunch with her friends. She saw me coming, and she had the biggest smile on her face. She stood up, waiting for me to speak. I hesitated and said, "Will you be my date for homecoming?" Her friends were watching us, and I was worried she'd embarrass me again. But she said, "I'll be honored." Then we kissed. Finally! Jackpot! What do you think of my story? Tell me in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.